Hello, everyone. Hola, and welcome to the third Mediterranean Startups and SMEs meeting held within the framework of the Mediterranean Economic Leaders Week, organized by ASCAMI in collaboration with WBAF. My name is Fadi Saab. I'm chairman of Trans Capital Finance, and today I'm pleased to moderate this roundtable from my dual role as president of the Integrity Values and Business Ethics Commission at ASCAMI and chair of the Corporate Governance and SME Support Center at WBAF. We will commence with opening remarks from Baybars Altuntash, Executive Chairman of the World Business Angels Forum, and from Anwar Zibawi, General Coordinator of ASCAMI, to be followed by an open debate with His Excellency Edward Chelsea, Minister for Protection of Entrepreneurship of Albania, Roberto Croci, Managing Director, Microsoft for Startups, Firyal Nas, Chairwoman, Bahrain Entrepreneurship Organization, Dr. Paul Dawani, Serial Investor in Startups and SME Ventures, and Director at the WBAF Business School, and with Andre Abi Awad, Founder, Entrepreneurship. I hope that you will enjoy this session. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Altuntash.
Thank you very much, dear Fadi. And I'm congratulating ASCAME and its respectable president for their continuing support to SMEs and startups of the Mediterranean region and Europe. I think it is a great idea to host such kind of an roundtable on SMEs and the startups, particularly in these difficult times of the world economy. I think roundtable is going to give very good outputs, new insights, new visions to produce new solutions, innovative solutions to startups challenges, and also some supportive ideas to new business founders. Mediterranean region is hosting thousands of startups from service industry, from France to Turkey, from Egypt to Greece, from Malta to Cyprus. It is really a great region which will produce great solutions to challenges of world startups and SMEs. Dear Fadi, I am leaving the floor to you, and dear Enver, I'm thanking again so much on behalf of the World Business Angels Investment Forum, an affiliated partner of the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, for your and your institute's efforts to empower the world economy through soft power of SMEs, startups, and entrepreneurs. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Baybars, for your kind words. I would like now to invite Mr. Zibawi for his remarks.
Okay, thank you, Fadi. I speak in Spanish because in order to facilitate the work of translation. En primer lugar, agradecer al señor Baybar Altunas también la colaboración con ASCAME. Nosotros consideramos siempre sumar sinergias a favor de la región mediterránea nos beneficia a todos y esperamos que con el World Business Angels Forum y con su presidente podamos a partir de ahora entablar eventos en toda la zona y también proyectos y, por qué no, intentar crear fondos dada la importancia hoy de la financiación para los emprendedores a lo largo y ancho del Mediterráneo. Estoy seguro que juntos podemos llegar muy lejos y sobre todo si sumamos dos organizaciones como son ASCAME y el World Business Angels Forum. Yo quiero centrar desde ASCAME nuestra apuesta por el espíritu emprendedor, porque consideramos que esto es un elemento vital para el desarrollo económico y motor para el crecimiento y la diversidad del sector privado, porque desempeña un papel importante en la contribución a la formación de capital, a la creación de oportunidades de empleo, a la reducción de las concentraciones de los poderes económicos, impulsa la creación y la distribución de la riqueza y promueve el crecimiento económico en general. Esos son factores que hoy, más que nunca, la región mediterránea necesita. Porque también consideramos que una economía que fomente y permite iniciar nuevas empresas, crea un ecosistema que facilite otros tipos de actividad económica productiva, es clave. El problema en muchos países mediterráneos es que los gobiernos se centran en la creación de empleo y no la creación de empresas. Y al final no debemos olvidar que el producto de las empresas de éxito es el empleo. Por esto, y a pesar de una situación compleja en nuestra región, hay un creciente número de aceleradores de startups, de fondos, de business angels en la región, que están ayudando a la creación de empleo y a la competitividad. Y también, ¿por qué no?, a una mayor productividad y sobre todo a reducir la pobreza en algunos países de la región. Para nosotros, los jóvenes mediterráneos son el recurso más valioso, innovador y dinámico de nuestra región. Pero no debemos olvidar que el 60% de la población de la región tiene menos de 25 años. Llegarán a los 700 millones en el año 2050. Nuestros jóvenes necesitan encontrar el apoyo y los recursos para asumir los riesgos necesarios para transformar sus ideas en negocios sostenibles. Necesitan ser guiados, apoyados y financiados y asesorados, especialmente por los gobiernos, por los organismos multilaterales que están trabajando en la región, pero también por las grandes empresas consolidadas que son más experimentadas y tienen más éxito. Porque es la responsabilidad de todos participar en el desarrollo empresarial de nuestros jóvenes. Los países de nuestra región deben impulsar la diversificación de sus economías. El objetivo es generar empleo estable, especialmente para los jóvenes, puesto que el paro en los jóvenes en toda la región alcanza el 45% del total. Lo que nos preocupa todavía más es que es el 50% en los jóvenes formados, es decir, los jóvenes que han terminado una carrera universitaria. En este contexto, el apoyo al desarrollo del espíritu empresarial tiene que ser una estrategia esencial. Para ello, los gobiernos deben ofrecer una plataforma acogedora a la iniciativa emprendedora, promocionar un entorno de negocios saludable, transparente y eficaz. Si queremos salir de la crisis y en vista del potencial material y humano de nuestra región. Las pymes mediterráneas son una parte inseparable de nuestra economía. La región cuenta con más de 25 millones de pymes, solamente en la parte sur y oriental. Teniendo en cuenta que estas y las empresas informales representan el 90% del tejido empresarial, el 60% del Producto Interior Bruto y el 70% del empleo en la región. Pero las pymes solo reciben el 8% del total de préstamos bancarios. Hay que corregir esta ecuación. Claro que es difícil emprender, porque todo emprendedor que se pone en marcha debe enfrentarse a múltiples obstáculos. Sea cual sea el sector o la naturaleza del negocio que va a emprender. Hay dificultades en la gestión de la contabilidad, en la contratación, fracasos, dudas, soledad, falta de motivación, apoyo o experiencia. Estos factores explican que casi 4 de cada 5 empresas emprendedoras fracasan en el mundo y en el Mediterráneo también. Las dificultades habituales se combinan con los elementos indicados como la instabilidad sociopolítica y económica, una cultura de emprendimiento todavía limitada, la falta de promoción de los emprendedores para el público en general. A pesar de esto, tenemos una de las tasas de emprendimiento más alta del mundo. Un 22% de la población de edad de trabajar, en comparación con el 11,8% de Estados Unidos y el 5,3% de China. Destacar también que la mayor tasa de emprendedores es femenino, es decir, el 27% de las chicas de nuestras mujeres mediterráneas participan en esta tarea y es la tasa más alta del mundo. Es decir, tenemos factores en lo cual apoyar en nuestro crecimiento y intentar asumir esta tarea. Y este es el propósito de ASCAME: fomentar el espíritu empresarial de los jóvenes, contribuir a mejor acceso a un empleo decente y estable y la promoción de la variedad entre hombres y mujeres. Consideramos que no podemos en la zona mediterránea y sobre todo en algunas zonas, algunos países, que el 50% de la población que es femenina esté en casa y no se incorpore al mundo laboral. No puede haber crecimiento, no puede haber desarrollo sin la participación de las mujeres. Tenemos que apostar por los jóvenes emprendedores, porque es una inversión de bajo coste, pero con un enorme potencial. En muchos casos es más que suficiente para cambiar nuestro destino. Muchas gracias a todos y deseo que este foro sea el inicio también de una gran colaboración con el World Business Angels Forum. Muchas gracias también al ministro de Albania por su participación y al resto de los ponentes, que es para nosotros un honor contar con este panel y sobre todo gracias al trabajo de Fadi, que ha sido el impulsor de este foro. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, señor Anwar. This is Spanish, so allow me to get back to English. Moving on to our distinguished panelists, I would like to ask each of you a common question about the obstacles that face startups and SMEs, especially relating to availability of adequate funding, access to global marketing for scaling, ability to attract professional managerial and operational teams, ability to efficiently implement technology and innovations, negative economic consequences of COVID-19 challenges, and any other items that you would like to add. Minister Shalsi, welcome. What are the challenges and opportunities for startups and SMEs in your region, please?
Well, thank you for inviting and making me part of such an interesting discussion at these very tough times. You know, we've been questioning ourselves in those days like never before. Since the pandemic, we've been thinking and rethinking about our roles, institutions, how should we handle. For those who don't know, I'm a minister, as you see, of State for Protection of Entrepreneurship, which is an unusual term, which is, you know, you cannot find it elsewhere. You have ombudsman in different countries, but not minister of state for protecting enterprise. And this is because we are undergoing a set of reforms, many reforms, on top of which is the judicial reform. My job on daily basis is to deal with complaints of the businesses. And one thing that the virus has shown, I think, to all of us, is that the weaknesses were there. The virus made them more visible. And I've been not just handling the complaints, but also individual complaints of different companies, but also paying visits to their premises, inviting the association at the ministry, discussing about all range of issues. And last year in October, we took a decision. As a matter of fact, it was a drastic decision by the Prime Minister, due to the fact that the entrepreneurs were not complaining about the level of the taxes as much as for the bureaucracies, for the procedures, for the way they were served in the front offices of the different state-owned agencies. It was then when we came across to a need which was showing a gap between existing community of startups and no legal framework, no policies from the government. It was due to the improvement of the contacts between the entrepreneurs and the government, but also between different state-owned agencies within the government, that we embraced the need for closing the gap. And right now we have a public consultation periods because we announced the law. The law is already now done, and it's going through the consultation process. As a matter of fact, all they wanted was consultancy. They were young, very talented people. They needed, and they were asking that, who should we consult with? And we brought together entrepreneurs, and we were trying to explain to them about the concept of startups. Imagine now that the generation of the entrepreneurs, considering that Albania was closed, was a dictatorship till 90s. So we had first entrepreneurs in the 90s. They were not, very acquainted with the concept of startups, accelerator, facilitators. So we try to put them in touch with these young, talented guys. From one side, to make them articulate the needs, and from the other side, the young, what can they do? And we have predicted in the law, exemptions from the tax, income tax on properties, and a process of registering as easy as possible. They were afraid when they were hearing, tax authorities, state control, inspectors. So we provided in the law as much facilities as we could. Then we presented the terms of grants, supporting programs, but it was a fantastic experience, because I can say now that the law was initiated by us, but was done through the community of startups. One thing that we came across, and we took the decision from the 1st of January 2021, the companies with a yearly turnover up to 120,000 euros will not pay corporate income tax for the next 10 years. So all companies up to 120,000 euros yearly turnover will not pay any corporate tax income, while for the SMEs up to 85,000 euros will not pay value added tax. The situation, as all over the world, has affected a lot more the small and medium enterprises than the big ones. And, people may give advice, but as it was shown during this month, every rush on fulfilling certain demands resulted not effective, not efficient enough. So we have to better calculate the steps we need to take. One other thing which helped us a lot was the decision of October last year to start with the online, at least applications from the 1st January 2020. It was a very tough decision, as a matter of fact, and by the end of this year, we will have more than 90% of the application for licenses, authorization, or different demands online. It was a process which started from the 1st of January this year. Very hard months, January, February. The agencies needed to switch on to this decision, which, as I said, was taken not suddenly, but it was taken not considering the concern of the people who were going to implement it. People were not prepared in October. They thought, how it's going to be possible during 2 months to go with online services. What practically happened was that by the end of this year, we're going to have more than 90% of them online. It was a process which enlightened us to better understand also the procedures from the application till the back end, the approval. And we found out a lot of paradoxes, a lot of obstacles. So it helped us re-engineering the processes that the application were going. One thing which I have done as a minister and has helped us a lot was closing the gap between the entrepreneurs from one side and the institutions, public institutions on the other side. There was a growing gap, as a matter of fact. There was a lack of communication. There was a lack of understanding each other. And we have now cases, successful cases, where an entrepreneur served to improve a service due to suggestion and comments they done. We have successful businesses in Albania, right? They were not felt before as part of the solutions. One expression I use to, now when I meet with a representative of the businesses, but also businesses as individuals, I say, please don't bring me only complaints. Bring also solutions, the way you think. And it's amazing when you see that they now well experienced to provide us new ways of looking at things. So we are communicating with them like never before. And one thing should be understood by all of us. We cannot do it alone. We don't have the monopoly of solving everything. Corona, the virus, has shown that we should change the way we approach things. We should change the way we see each other from the perspective of government and entrepreneurs. And there is a lot to learn from the entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for these valuable remarks and information about Albania's ecosystem that will certainly be a guiding benchmark for others to follow. Moving on, hello, Roberto. Would you please share with us some views from the perspective of Microsoft on this matter?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me and thank you for this great initiative. It's great to be part of this forum and surface challenges, but also propose solutions. As Edward was just mentioning, the approach shouldn't be the one of, especially with government, to raise only complaints, right? But also come with that attitude of proactively sharing potential solutions. So thank you for having me. It's an honor. I would start from, well, I am based in Dubai, so I cover in Microsoft. I'm responsible to lead the startups across the Middle East and Africa region. And it's an exciting role here. You mentioned before the issue with taxation, and I'm living in a place where there is no taxation, right? But still, there is a lot of bureaucracy, or the time to set up a business is still significant, even opening a bank account. But I would say more importantly, what is striking here is that closing a business still costs more than starting it up. And this is kind of shocking, right? So I would love to offer this perspective in the sense that, first of all, high level, we talked about the ecosystem, right? And in our experience, a startup ecosystem is a sort of a new type of an industry cluster. So the real thing to make an ecosystem thrive is to connect the dots and close the gaps across the different constituents. So here, for example, government is very much involved. Here there is also as well a minister for small, medium businesses and entrepreneurship in the UAE, and there are gaps in between the different constituents. But here, government, for example, is very much pushing the agenda of differentiating economy from oil to knowledge based, and that come with offering chances for entrepreneurs to set up here their businesses, thus creating new jobs and connecting to the vision of differentiating economy and really trying to export technology from here, right? So it's a long-term vision. Now, the starting point is that the different constituents are not aligned to each other. So in a startup ecosystem, we have public and private sector. So definitely we have government on one side, we have corporates that most of the times are not part of the conversations or not efficiently part of the conversation. We have the entrepreneurs, the startups, we have policymakers, we have the regulators, which are really key in developing or changing or updating policies in a way that would allow entrepreneurs to start, new ventures in verticals or industries where maybe policies are still a blocker. And then, of course, you have also the academia and how to say, the other the investors side and others ecosystem players, right? So this is fragmented. So it's very siloed. This is the issue is that normally in this part of the world, these ecosystems are still very siloed, and not all of these constituents are talking together. If I think in Europe, a country like France, what they did with Station F and how Macron is really involved in protecting French startups to grow and develop, there is one big initiative like Station F, there is one management, one steering committee driving something more at scale or with higher impact. So one proposal is in building the ecosystem is definitely aligning the interests and the perspectives of these different constituents and sort of building a steering committee to drive the agenda to build one tech ecosystem and push with a long-term vision and push the agenda forward, right? Most of the times, and especially here in this region, the ecosystem is still very early stage. So what an early stage ecosystem needs to thrive is, in our experience, we have seen that, first of all, bigger is better. Bigger is better in the sense that as an enabling factor, the number of startups that are in the ecosystem should increase. There should be abundance of thinking. There should be abundance of ideas. And with that, it means that there should be the right conditions for an entrepreneur to fail. Again, it's especially in this part of the world, hiring and firing people. Meaning, in terms of and reabsorbing that into the environment is not easy, and the cost of closing is still higher than the cost of starting up, right? So it's very difficult for an entrepreneur to set up in this part of the world. But if we really want to take this ecosystem to the next level, bigger is better. So there should be, as an enabling factor, more startups. On top of that, there should be balanced resources and an investment into education and attracting also talent, which is started in this region, but is still far to be, at the maximum potential that it can be achieved here. And one other factor that is really important is local connectedness. So we have seen that ecosystem where there is local connectedness, there is at least 3 times revenue growth for startups in those ecosystems. And local connectedness means founder to founder, the availability of great mentors, world-class mentors that have been through the ups and downs and can give really practical advice because they have been there. And also the quality of these connections. It's not just the purpose and the quality of these connections. Then, of course, global connectedness and I would say global market reach. For example, here in the region, one issue is still that most of the corporates, they started the process of digitization, but they're not there yet. If you think about a closer ecosystem, India is 2 hours flight from here. And they started 30 years ago with all the process of offshoring IT, right? So in 30 years, they developed a lot of talent, and 30 unicorns now are flourishing out of India, and there will be more in the coming years, right? So they invested ahead of time, and it took time to develop that ecosystem. So here as well, it's very important to have the quality that should increase, right? So if the number of startups is an enabling factor, a critical success factor is definitely they increase the quality of the startups and also increase the availability of early stage funding. There is capital in this region, but when it comes to early stage funding, we are still not where we should be. Most of the funds here are at the first fund, and there is not enough capital injected from outside. And I would say also, when it comes to the corporates, for example, where would a startup exit to in this region? So corporates are either have the fear of being disrupted, or they really think long term, but they are trying in this region. They are trying still to do things themselves, whereas they could look at innovation from different angles, and maybe for things that great startups have already developed solutions, they might think of working with startups, offering paid POCs, and have more a different approach to innovation. So if you ask me, increasing the number of startups, the quality of startups, increasing the availability of early stage funding is still something to develop here. connecting the dots across the different constituents around the steering committee and one vision to develop an ecosystem in terms of balanced resources available, in terms of more startups available, in terms of local connectedness is something really critical and important. And last point I would mention is talent and skilling. A long-term vision should start early on from high school, higher education, and sharing and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs with the right mindset, with a growth mindset. I've had the privilege of being a founder myself early on, and then I've been working for big tech companies in Google and Microsoft. And I've learned a lot from these companies in terms of how to set the right culture, how to fail forward or never fail to fail, how to experiment and try new things, how to hire the right people in order to achieve goal and scale. So I believe governments in this part of the world really need to invest into developing the skills that their next generation, as someone said before, there is a big percentage of the population here that is very young, and this is the great opportunity. These young people need to understand that entrepreneurship is hard, but what is the right mindset to tap into entrepreneurship with confidence? They need to have the right conditions to fail and to learn while failing and move forward. And there is there should be consistent initiatives in order to tackle youth and connect youth and entrepreneurship with then employability skilling, and eventually also with corporate boards, for example, to bring the perspective of youth in there and to bring innovation in a different way also to the corporates.
Great. Thank you very much, Roberto, for these great recommendations. We hope that Microsoft, with your efforts, will increase its footprint in this region and support the growing ecosystem all around us. Thank you again. Hello, Ferial. Being based in Bahrain with a hands-on experience relating to this topic, we would like to hear your comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Fadi, for inviting me to be part of this very interesting panel and with very interesting speakers, and very glad to hear all of them. With regards to Bahrain, to the Bahrain ecosystem, actually, Bahraini ecosystem, entrepreneurship ecosystem is a quite strong ecosystem we have in Bahrain. The government is working very hard to strengthen this ecosystem in terms of putting different initiatives, in terms and even we have and the government also, which is in terms of economic development board, we always market Bahrain as a business hub and a business and a gateway for the region, for the Gulf region. So I think in our case it's different than what Roberto just mentioned. We are very much working very hard to strengthen the ecosystem and startups, since it is 97% of the total CRs of Bahrain is owned by SMEs. It is the backbone of the Bahraini economy, and the government put a big attention to that, and they regulated so many rules and regulations. Like, for example, they have put a regulation of putting 30% of the total government tenders should go for the SMEs. And of course, they have opened so many loans to support startups, banks, to support startups and to give loans and grants for startups and entrepreneurs with innovative ideas. Like we have the Al-Usra Bank, we have the Bahrain Development Bank. There are so many, and we have also the Labor Fund regulatory fund, which went also into a fund called Temkeen in Bahrain. And Temkeen is a fund that is concentrating on strengthening the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Bahrain, and they have different programs to support Bahraini entrepreneurs on different aspects and consultations, and sometimes they do give 50% support for opening a few businesses, for automating businesses. It depends on what type of business you have, and there are different of programs, and they are sharing their strategies and their programs. When they design their programs, they invite all the ecosystem to be part of designing those programs, because it is there to support the entrepreneurship ecosystem and to strengthen the Bahraini entrepreneurs and to help them to grow up. When it comes also to scaling, there is the opportunity of listing in Bahrain Borsa. There are some accelerators who are offering seed capitals for some of the entrepreneurs. And again, one more support that the government also is giving the ecosystem is supporting the Bahraini salaries, Bahraini employees. Partial of their salaries is even covered by the Bahraini government, sometimes with a certain criteria. And even Tamkeen, this entrepreneurship fund, is also pushing for Bahrainization, the jobs. So they also cover some of the salaries for the Bahrainis staff in those companies. When it comes to implementing technology and innovation, there are so many. Recently our government signed a few MOUs with different countries who are very high tech in innovation and very well known in high tech and innovation. And this is the where we will benefit at the end to share the technology and to share the know-how, and there is a big stress on creating an innovation ecosystem or innovation mindset in Bahrain from all the sectors, from the private sectors, from the government sectors. With regards to the COVID, the Bahraini government pumped almost 4.3 billion dinars from the government to support the pandemic problems that have affected the ecosystem. In terms of different support through Tamkeen, they have given grants for affected businesses. They have waived the electricity bill from the entrepreneurs for 6 months. They have delayed the bank loans for 6 months, and they have even subsidies or paid the Bahraini employee salaries for 6 months for most of the Bahraini government. This is from the government side of it, but from our side, to me as a chairwoman for the Bahrain Entrepreneurship Organization, and we are a non-profit organization, a non-governmental, we complete what our government is doing. We are supporting the ecosystem in our different ways. So for the pandemic, we came up with different initiatives. One of them is to create an online platform, and we called it Bahrain Souk, to list all the Bahraini entrepreneurs, regardless of their type of businesses, whether it is service-oriented or it is a retail and vending. We have it is open for all Bahraini entrepreneurs to be part of this Bahraini Souk, and this is to help them to grow up and create a bigger market. The biggest challenge, of course, for any entrepreneur today is access to finance, access to a bigger market, access to a professional mentorship. These are all challenges that we are trying as part of the ecosystem to find solutions for that, to complete what our government is initiating and to put in this ecosystem. The second initiative that we have came up with as a PEO is is to sign, of course, the most important thing that we have done in this last year is signing to open the WBAF Bahrain country office in Bahrain, which will definitely help the ecosystem in Bahrain in terms of different workshops, in terms of courses that the WBF school will be conducted through this office to support the ecosystem, in terms of supporting them and training them to how to be part of a global fundraising raising stages in future. And of course, the WBAF is going to be a big support for the Bahraini ecosystem, definitely, and it will have its positive impact on that. And one more thing that we have also done is that as an organization, we have also done some consultations and some mentorship one-to-one to some of the entrepreneurs who were affected also from the pandemic. So it was part of our social responsibility to support those entrepreneurs who were and startups who were really suffering from this. So at the end, I would say, I mean, that, and we also, one of the things that we are also working on now is also working with different embassies to support. So like, for example, we have received an invitation from one of the embassies also to implement a full course at their cost to educate and help women entrepreneurs. These are all initiatives in Bahrain. We work as an ecosystem. We work so much together when it comes to governmental, when it comes to non-governmental, to corporate. We work together. We are a small country, but we work so hard to strengthen our entrepreneurship ecosystem. As I said, it is the SMEs are the backbone of our Bahraini economy, and we work so hard to strengthen this. And there is a lovely Bahraini saying said, "One hand doesn't clap on its own." So the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us how we can't cope by ourselves. We need to put our hand together. And this is what we are doing, I think, in this panel. We are learning from each other. And I'm really honored to be part of this panel. Thank you, Fadi.
Thank you very much, Ferial. We will clap in both hands for you. Thank you for this deep insight into the region, and we wish you continued success. Welcome, Paul. You are an experienced investor and director of the WBF Business School. Can you kindly share your assessment of this matter, please? Okay, maybe while Paul is getting ready, I can move on to Andre and Juan, if you can, and we'll get back to him. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Fadi. Thank you, Askame. Thank you, BAF, for this event. It's my second time at MEDAWEEK. Well, I want to give an overview about the region, especially we are talking about the Mediterranean region. In the last couple of weeks, I trained 13 countries from my own home in the village. So basically, that's a good opportunity having it through Corona. digitizing everything, and mostly training, consulting, and like this roundtable we are having here. Most of the sectors that were present in these programs were social entrepreneurs, agri-tech, clean energy sectors. They have a lot of potential to grow in the region, create sustainable solutions, green economies, and jobs. So my first recommendation is for the region to invest in these sectors hand in hand, to clap in both hands, especially in collaboration with technologies that we invested a lot in technology during the past years. So in terms of funding, I can say in the region we have several ideation and very early stage grants. They are available, though the post-acceleration and the pre-seed stage, they have very little funding across the South Mediterranean region. Of course, we have some ecosystems are more advanced than others. In terms of scaling support, the scaling support is also limited in some places to VCs, venture capitals, with a mission to help scale. And we have limited support programs for scaling up funded startups, so they get stuck in this stage. In terms of staffing, we have millions of raw talents in the region. They require support. I know Microsoft have many programs they are supporting, especially in technologies and startups, but we also have senior roles. They have limited or they lack some internationalization experience. And this is one of the recommendations for the MEDAWEEK consortium, where also countries can collaborate in this. And I'll have some suggestions also at the end with the second section of our discussion. Also in staffing, we saw a lot of opportunities in many industries where job descriptions were redefined for employees. And we have some employees, let's say, for example, we have employees in restaurants, they changed their job description from serving meals to delivering meals. That's one insight here. So, of course, the COVID-19, that it had a crystal clear impact on digitization. It accelerated the process of digital transformation in many businesses. It's, of course, an opportunity for the region, especially in the Mediterranean, because we need to collaborate together. We need to ensure enabling environments are also moving in the same direction. Because if we can achieve this, we can achieve a lot. And especially in governments, I was glad the minister tackled many opportunities and many measures are taken for protecting entrepreneurship. I loved this perception of protecting entrepreneurship. So if governments in our region ride this wave of digitization, it will lead to less corruption, we hope so, and more efficiencies, smarter decision making based on real accurate data. And for me, this can be really transforming all the industries and all the entrepreneurship sector in the Mediterranean. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed, for the positive energy created in support of entrepreneurship. We wish you continued success. Hi, Paul, welcome back. So the floor was yours.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm sorry, I think I switched off my mic and then somehow it froze. Thank you all very much. I think that the previous speakers have covered very well, and I think I can start with the minister's statement, for example, when he indicated what governments can do, and he gave us a very good example of a proactive approach. We also know that the tax incentives are important, but of course we also heard, for example, from Roberto, that there are countries that don't have any tax in any way. It means that the incentive of low tax, for example, Dubai is premised entirely on that, but still startups face the most basic of difficulty, even setting up, let alone closing down. I wasn't aware, for example, that the cost of closing in Dubai is actually more expensive than starting up. That's interesting, and that definitely is a problem. So Perhaps I can put, to add a bit more to the leg of businesses, let's say SMEs, and what are they facing? We've heard also from previous speaker in relation to digital transformation. Clearly, this is the time that companies are either having to digitize, and perhaps this is something that they had delayed doing for some time. Luckily, the cost of doing this work is generally declining over time, and sometimes makes sense to, in fact, delay some of these implementations. And it turns out that now is the time because we have to do it. So that is a good start to the, let me say, digitization. I think that the other effect, which is also important, is that companies, even established companies, are now willing to operate in a different environment. That means that they have to allow their people to work remotely, for example, which is something that wasn't available. Even in the education sector, we are seeing that classrooms have to be, for example, 50% full. The rest of the time, people will have to be online, and therefore, even from a young age, parents, teachers, etc., are turning into more of an online environment. What that should mean is that the user interface is accepting a digital interface more perhaps than they would have, let me say, accepted around a year ago. And this covers all sectors of activity. So of course with that will become maybe a bit more difficulty for some businesses, but also a lot of opportunity for them to engage with their customers, and also to utilize the talents of their employees in a more efficient way without them having to waste a lot of time moving around from place to place. So therefore, I think that given that this pandemic has hit everybody in the same way, and I think that is the opportunity in itself, that coming out of this catastrophe of this pandemic, is that since everybody is hurt in the same way, we all need to do the same things, and that pushes us all. This is not a regional problem, this is not a national problem, but this in fact is a global problem. So I am generally optimistic that the challenges that businesses face in any case, raising money is very difficult, but perhaps now there will be more avenues for that money to come. And again, over a medium that would be easier to implement. The second part, of course, is attracting talent, and perhaps some of that talent, we heard earlier, people can also provide support from where they are in a manner where many customers were not happy that you can consult with them remotely. They want to see your face, they want to see you in front of them, and you can do more of that, you can help more people. So the cost of doing things is definitely coming down, and they have to in such a pandemic. Government support is, of course, extremely critical, especially in providing salaries for the period that we don't want jobs to be lost, and most governments are doing that in a very good way. In relation to supporting startups, of course, we can see more to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. This is short and sweet. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for these very pertinent comments. I would like to ask each of you, again, a common follow-up question. Could you briefly suggest a strategy towards establishing a collaborative culture for the startup and SME ecosystem, such as an infrastructure of incubators, accelerators, service providers, business angel network, etc.? And maybe Minister Shalsi would like to start this discussion.
Well, considering the experiences of the previous speakers, I should have spoken the last. I'm the least experienced on this valuable panel, as a matter of fact. One thing for sure is the fact that since I was invited in February in your activity in Istanbul, we broaden the vision. We noticed what other countries had done we saw with our own eyes success stories which helped us a lot. And I've been sharing the experience of my country now during these months with other countries. So the communication between ourselves and experiences that we all undergoing through are needed to be known. As rightly was mentioned that Corona has brought us to some big challenges which we cannot fight alone or each country by itself. I need to tell that while we are building up the ecosystem now, and we are discussing with young, very young, talented guys, we are coming across to some very good experiences on other countries, which we need just to implement, as we are coming across some other experiences which we need to adapt. So to summarize it, the platform where easily people can find models, success stories, failures will help a lot. Easier we can get the information, what is happening elsewhere, better will be to understand in order not to repeat the mistakes of other countries. We don't have time to prove all mistakes and to learn from our own mistakes. So this platform of communication should be as easy as possible in order to allow everybody from everywhere in this digitalization revolution that we are living now to be acquainted and to learn and to share and to be part of. Thank you.
Thanks, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency. I think this reconfirms the point of Roberto about connectivity and the importance of sharing knowledge and widening expertise so that we keep the momentum going in a positive manner. So, Roberto, the floor is now yours.
Yeah, thank you, Fabian. Thank you for all the feedbacks and the comments that were shared before. It's really inspiring. Allow me to be a little bit provocative here, in the sense that we have been talking about COVID and how this accelerated digitization, right? But if you look at it, especially look at the startups, even before COVID came, look at the valuation of some of the startups that were so much celebrated before, even in 2019, before the COVID came, and it came to a point where those startups, didn't turn out into successful businesses, right, or successful valuations, because it was all based on growth at any cost, right? And that might be a model that can work elsewhere in the world, but probably not in this part of the world. So definitely, what COVID accelerated before digitization when it comes to startups is also this the consciousness that growth at any cost is not a real metric to follow, right? It's not a real path to follow. It's there is more focus now, I would say, on profitability, sustainability, and impact. And this is extremely important as part of this conversation. The other thing that COVID accelerated is definitely, as someone mentioned before, digitization, right? And we are primarily involved as a technology company in that, where we have seen that happening. All the conversation moved from if to when. So whereas companies before were wondering if, now they're just asking when, right? So and that's indicative. But that's the problem, in my opinion, and that's a little bit the provocation, is the thinking of the leadership teams of this organization is still short term, because they are still having a reactive approach to COVID-19. And what about COVID-20, COVID-21, or whatever else might happen in the future? So there has been more a denial or a reactive passive approach to what happened, instead of the thinking should be longer term and see how are we reimagining the future. And this is where the things should be more interesting. So this is one thing. The other thing I would say that is needed is real success metrics. So how are we defining success when it comes to building a startup ecosystem? What I see across the region, no matter the effort, still there are not many startups that exited in this region. And there are not many startups that are really, exporting globally. Not that is the mission, but what are the real measures of success? There are a lot of vanity metrics here because of the siloed approach, a lot of fragmentation, and most of the times it turns down to number of startups because you need to hit the KPI and, you're measured on those KPIs, and fair enough, but that's not real impact, especially in a world where focus on social impact, social entrepreneurship, sustainability is becoming increasingly important, and that's a wave that can create great companies. And by reflection, as someone said before, then great jobs. So what are the real metrics that would drive this success? So starting from the end. And on that, building this alignment across the different constituents, right? That would turn in a committee that is driving the leadership, so the vision of where the ecosystem needs to go, the alignment across the different constituents, championing the initiatives and the key leaders in the ecosystem that can really also provide visibility to represent this ecosystem internationally, and I would say also the governance. And the last point is, in fact, government can play here a big role to connect the dots, because if government is primarily involved in changing the policies and sharing what the challenges for the economy are, that's where then the majority of the focus should be in terms of new ideas, new development, and new businesses that are going to create solid, sustainable small enterprises or startups that by reflection will create more jobs.
That's great, Roberto. Thank you very much for this very valuable input. Ferial, can you please tell us a bit more about the collaborative structure in Bahrain?
Yes, with regards to Bahrain, the accelerator and the incubators were only like a few years back. It was only for allowed to be opened or operated by the Bahrain Development Bank and the government. But now, since then, like from a few years back, they have opened the license, and we can open a CR and open an accelerator and incubator. So there are a number of incubators and accelerators in Bahrain, and there is a division in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Tourism to manage, it's an SME department, where to manage those accelerators, to make sure that those accelerators are doing their right jobs, they are on the right track, they are following the regulations, they are doing what they're supposed to do and deliver what they're supposed to do. I mean, there are, in terms of programs, in terms of startups that they are joining. And one more thing, dear Fadi, they have also put a rule that there are no general incubators or a general business startup. It has to be a specialized startup that you can get a CR. From my point of view, from the Bahrain Entrepreneurship Organization, we have opened an incubator and accelerator which is concentrating and specialized in export. And we have signed an MOU with a company from USA which is specialized. It's an export accelerator to conduct programs to help exporting and to put those entrepreneurs who are willing to export and expand on track. This is one thing. And from the other side, I think we as for the future, I think we need to prepare ourselves and to put studies and plans for any future crisis. I think like this pandemic, what happened. So we need to also change and advise those entrepreneurs to change their business models to concentrate on businesses that has more sustainable businesses, which we felt it during this pandemic. That I think if I would go back, I would go and I will invest in food security and agriculture and health and innovative businesses, which should self-sustain us when there is such crisis in future. The other thing is that we are also working in Bahrain in coordinating with accelerators and business hubs and incubators specialized from outside the countries. As I said, like the one from USA, we are also coordinating with in future, we are discussing with a hub, an incubator who are concentrating on solar energy and solar panels from Spain. We are working on different innovation or innovative ideas or accelerators who are specialized in high tech. For example, we do have the FinTech Bay in Bahrain as well. So specialized accelerators is, I think, the future and what we should concentrate on. And of course, in the coming future, after this pandemic, there are lots of businesses, and the new businesses will take the incubators as their offices. I don't think everyone was going to spend a lot of money on shops and big offices. And I think that the pandemic has really gave us a lesson in changing our business models and in reducing the overheads that we used to have. One of the things and the initiatives that our government also that I have heard about today itself, that there is the Gulf Incubators and Accelerator Program. And these are all accelerators and incubators from the GCC who are willing, who kept a program together to coordinate and to transfer the knowledge and the know-how and the experiences, which is, I think this is a very good initiative and a strategy to learn and benefit from each other. I think this is what I have in mind for this.
Great. Thank you very much, Farial. Thank you for sharing these views. Paul, you have invested in many startups yourself. So would you share your experience, please?
Thank you, Fadi. Yes, I have invested mostly in the technology area initially, which is venture capital and mostly internet or telecom support type, let me say, businesses that, of course, are closer to where I originate from. We then started expanding into renewable energy and also into, for example, now biogas and even fertilizers, which is a brand new area which we discovered almost accidentally as a part of our biogas project. I mean, initially we were building up a renewable energy business, and of course what we do is we sell the product to a fertilizer company, and then we found out that there's a big value in that, and we started diversifying into that area. And I learned a lot of lessons from this. We also now are moving into sulfates mining using geowater, and again, this is a purely export type project. So coming, let me say, over this period, I can share the following lessons, let me say. I have worked with, we did around half of these are pure startups, let's say around 11, 12 now are basically coming from nothing. And what is important in these type of startups is that these were people that we were working with before. So we knew each other and we raised money for them to be able to get going. But what was clear to me in a lot of this technology world is that most of the underlying thinking was not sustainable. I mean, we're hearing now the word sustainability in a different context, but I would also put a rather controversial statement here to say that I believe that most of the technology stories are absolute hype. Not because technology doesn't have a future, but because the future seems to be for only one technology company in any domain. And perhaps if you're lucky, there could be room for a close second. So what happens is that successful companies who built something up, which got acquired by a giant company, started to create the hype. The hype meant unsustainable or unrealistic valuations that were a value to the buyer, but not an intrinsic value of the business that you are selling. So clearly the one who's buying you out is buying you for cash and shares, and he sees that value in you, but only at the expense of, obviously, everybody else. That doesn't mean that you can emulate that success sustainably. So we need to educate our new generation or the people who are making startups. They don't all have to be young. People can start companies at any age. Is the fact that you need to build a sustainable business. It has to be a real business and not a hype, because you cannot sell a hype. That relates to what Roberto said, growth at any cost. Yeah, sure, because if you're building up something just to sell it, then that growth is of a value to your buyer, but in itself, it doesn't have a value. And that would be, therefore, a value to only one buyer. I mean, the value of YouTube to Google was a shocking number at the time, and now that represents perhaps maybe a third of their value, now that they started generating, more ad revenue. Again, that's no model for anybody. The same thing is for, let me say, Instagram to Facebook. I don't want to even say WhatsApp. So, which is another example as well. So therefore, people should move away from these hyped stories. SoftBank is another hype story, for example, and now they started doing, let me say, more correct things. And again, we know for a fact that WeWork is not a differentiated story, and then, we saw what happened to it. So sustainable businesses are businesses that have to be built, and I'm talking sustainability here in the context of a financial metric. It has to generate a meaningful EBITDA, and at a certain point, it should be capable of an exit in a forum such as at least 3 or 4 people would be interested in acquiring it. It cannot be only one. Okay, that's an all or nothing roulette gamble. Or, of course, listing on a stock market. And that requires either a growth story when you list it, so you're therefore selling a growth story because you're going to build it up and there's value in the growth, or it's a sustainable dividend payout that investors that are investing in your company can see that they can get a return on their investment. And that is the biggest test of all, that to attract the money that you need to realize your idea is for them to believe in a sustainable story in the economic sense. And of course, if that's also contributing to sustainability of life in general, that would, of course, would be a very big bonus. But not all companies are going to be able to operate in these businesses. But if you are doing something correctly, just providing products and services to other companies in technology, for example, digitizing them in itself is a very important contribution. And there's a lot of potential I see, in that area. So in summary, I would basically say that the future is a lot more real than it was a year ago, because the hype is out, the overselling of stories is out, the PR is much down to earth, and amazingly also, you are able not to waste time and money just going around to look someone in the face and make him an offer. So you can try 10 clients online, then you would definitely couldn't do that in physical space. Or customers, I mean, in this sense, if you're customers, or it's a B2B type. So I am optimistic about the future, but coming from a catastrophic pandemic, so I'm not positive on the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. These are very thought-provoking comments. Thank you for sharing them. Andre, in Lebanon, we are great at promoting theory, what we should do. But in practice, many things we end up not doing. What are your comments on the ecosystem from your point of view?
Fadi, yes, you were saying something about Lebanon, but I couldn't hear you. There was
It's good because it wasn't a very good remark in favor of Lebanon. I was saying in Lebanon we are great at promoting the theory of what needs to be done or what we want to do, the promises that for the most end up being empty promises because in practice many things are lagging. So in this collaborative culture we're talking about, what are your views?
Yes. So, Fadi, as you noticed from my early answer, I'm focusing more on the Mediterranean instead of talking only about Lebanon. Because if I want to talk about Lebanon, I'm going to talk about a lot of challenges, although we have many opportunities, and we all know what's happening in Lebanon. And I don't want to be preaching something and working on something else. What I am doing, at least in entrepreneurship, and my collaboration with all the ecosystem in the Mediterranean and other regions, as I just said, during the past 2 weeks, I worked with 13 countries. Like today, I started with Iraqi entrepreneurs, then Lebanese entrepreneurs, now in this MEDAWEEK roundtable, and I'm ending with a Canadian mastermind. So the COVID-19 gave us this opportunity to work interconnectively, not in silos. And my recommendations will be, please, let's partner more. At the beginning, many sectors and businesses were resisting the digital transformation. Now that the majority are riding this wave, signing deals online, entering new markets with virtual partnerships, let's digitize more opportunities and scale them. I would start with clusters. 2 weeks ago, I moderated a focus group. It was a training for agri-food ecosystem in 8 countries. And the partnerships that went from this workshop were really amazing. And especially when we talk about one vertical, for example, agriculture, we can create clusters. And instead of creating clusters locally, like in Lebanon, we have the Koot cluster, for example, it's for agri-food industries. If we can create clusters in the Mediterranean, we can have more opportunities and more interactions from this network. And we all know that clusters support innovation and growth. They offer knowledge sharing, partnership, infrastructure, and a skills pool and career opportunities. So let's start with clusters for each business vertical in the Mediterranean, and I am sure we will have a lot of opportunities for these businesses. So one is clusters. 2, I would say we have the support of the WBAF here. And from my interactions with the different ecosystems in the Mediterranean, I know that we have many aspiring business angels, yet they lack the proper training and support. So my second recommendation would be, let's create more training programs to equip business angels with the right mindset, tools, strategies, and opportunities from the different accelerators, incubators, and programs. At the end, I remember a couple years ago, we discussed a Mediterranean hub with Mr. Zibawi for entrepreneurs in the Mediterranean. Now is our era. I encourage all MEDAWEEK participants in collaboration with Askami to create a focus group and start this hub now that we are all interconnected and on the same table. So these are my 3 recommendations for a collaborative work in all the Mediterranean and MEDAWEEK participants. Let's not work in silos. Let's partner hand in hand and create more opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Andre. Certainly, I think we should follow up on all these recommendations, and you can count on WBAF's support and on Askami's support regarding these matters. So, gentlemen and lady, in closing, I would like to give the floor to each of you for one last very brief takeaway. Yeah. One last quick, brief takeaway comment from each of the panelists, and I'm giving the floor to Minister Shalsi.
We had the chance and still have the chance to deeply reflect and reset not only our thinking, but also some of the institutions. Let's serve this pandemic, get prepared for the future like never before. Either we have to redesign the institutions to receive the models, I don't know, but for sure it's a new perspective from which we have to judge for the future.
Great. Thank you, Minister Chelsea. Roberto?
Thank you for this forum and great feedbacks, great learnings. I would share a positive message in the sense that looking positively at the future, despite despite the situation and what happened, but looking positively at the future in terms of finding at the end of the day, entrepreneurship and founders is all about finding a way even through challenges, right? And other crises or other tough situations in the past have shown that there are ideas when in times of necessity. Or so I'm confident about the future, but I would encourage to build this knowledge sharing, to build this alignment, to build this ecosystem in a way that is really going to have an impact. And this is so that it's sharing a message of a positive message for the future. It's all about also the mindset and investing into the skilling of youth, looking long term. To make sure that the fact that this population in this part of the world are young population, government and the other stakeholders in the ecosystem are creating the conditions and are focusing on the sources needed for this generation then to flourish and to create great enterprises, to create new businesses and launching new ventures.
Thank you, Roberto. Ferial?
We get is from the worst times and the most difficult times, the best opportunities will come. I repeat my word that one hand doesn't clap on its own. We need to put our hands together and work together and learn from this pandemic that has been done. We need to exchange the knowledge. I loved what Andrea suggested. We need, and I'm sure the WBF will give us the biggest support to bring all together this knowledge together and to create a global support for the entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Thank you, Ferial. Paul?
Well, I think in closing, I would say that if you are a business owner, this is a very important time for you to think very carefully what you should be doing 5 years from now, because it's not going to be what you were doing 5 years ago. And that's not because of the pandemic. That's just the nature of business. Things are changing extremely fast. If you are working for such a company and they are not able to invest in you right now, then invest in yourself. And there are lots of courses that you can take, read, study as much as you possibly can. This is the time you need to equip yourself for the next 5+ years, and therefore you need to invest in yourself. And finally, to all people, if you're able to help others, help others. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Andre?
Years for people to acknowledge that the Mediterranean diet is healthy for everyone. Yes,
Andre, can you start again, please?
Of course. So I would close on this note. It took 1,000 years for everyone to acknowledge the Mediterranean diet as a healthy one worldwide. Let's redefine Mediterranean entrepreneurship and let it spread everywhere, but we need a collaborative ecosystem and also to join our hands and create more opportunities around the Mediterranean. And believe me, if you have traveled around the Mediterranean, you can know that we can connect very easily with each other. So let's focus all these networks on entrepreneurship and thrive and make it not a Silicon Valley, a Mediterranean sample for everyone in the world.
Thank you. I think our time is up, so I would like to give a very big thanks in closing to all our panelists for your great comments and to the audience at large for participating in this roundup, and look forward to seeing everybody live, not online, live again in the near future. Thank you. Goodbye.